First things first, we see a tweet go out by the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
Of Jeremy Swayman pulling up in a parking garage. Then the reports come out, and the Bruins put out a statement themselves. 8 years, $66 million, so it's an 8.25 annual average value.
More than we thought.
Fourth highest, literally identical to the Ilya Sorokin contract. This is huge for the Bruins. You get your guy in the door. And it's huge for Jeremy Swayman sticking with this team. For Don Sweeney to find a solution with Louis Gross and Jeremy Swayman. Louis Gross is an agent. All the work they did all offseason, it's done. This is a final piece you needed for what is a Stanley Cup contending roster.
Usually I don't pat myself on the back, but I'm going to go ahead and do this because if you remember, GB, one of us on this here program said this would get done before the first game.
Yep.
I've seen this happen so many times in sports where it's so contentious on both sides and a deal's never going to get done and we're miles apart. And then all of a sudden, nothing like the season opener being breathing down your neck for you to get a deal done, and they did. This is more than both you and I thought it would be. So but I will say this. It's a win-win for both sides. Obviously, Sway got what he wanted financially here. But I think for the Bruins, the long term, the 8 years, is a win for the Bruins. And it goes back to what you and I said. Now, I will give you credit here because you really talked me into this. But I still think, looking back on this whole situation, Jeremy Swayman should have bet on himself a bit here and went short-term deal. But the fact that he stuck to his guns, he wanted the 8-year deal, this is beneficial to the Bruins in the long term because we know this goalie market is about to get reset. And in 2-3 years, this Jeremy Swayman deal is a bargain. And so that's a win for the Bruins. A guy this young with this much hockey in front of him, and we all are projecting here, but we think we haven't seen the best hockey from Jeremy Swayman yet. So that's a win for the Bruins to have him locked up long term.
Don Sweeney, obviously relieved, but very happy to get it done.
Yes.
Jeremy Swayman, very thankful.
He got what he wanted.
A lot of gratitude to also be staying in Boston, and he got paid.
Yeah.
I said $8 million, cut it. 8.25, fine, live with it. Because the way I still look at this roster as it's assembled, the way that dressing room is, and the timing of their window, it's a long-term deal, which is huge. You get a cup in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
Maybe even this year.
Yes.
The next
could
few
be this
years.
year.
The
It
next
could be
few
this
years.
year.
I don't care. Worth every cent, worth every penny.
I agree.
And how the goalie market is trending once Igor Shesterkin gets paid.
Bingo.
That's going to break $11 million a year. And you're going to look at Jeremy Swayman. It's going to be a bargain. We've seen him in one playoff run.
Yes.
He was absolutely phenomenal.
Yes.
Now we have to see him for an entire regular season and a playoff run.
Yeah.
And a Stanley Cup run. Let's get to the first soundbite we have from Jeremy Swayman. I just love this. This is him being very reflective and grateful, speaking to the media on Sunday.
I mean, I'm happy with everything. And again, I couldn't be more excited to be in this position. So you can dissect it all you want and, think about it. But again, what's that going to do? We're here right now. I got a plane to catch in an hour, and that's all I care about, man. I couldn't be more happy. And it's funny when you look at the big picture of things and, 10, 15 years ago, I would never believe that this would be a reality in my world. So the kid from Alaska standing right here in front of you is really happy and beyond pleased to be a Bruin for 8 more years.
A kid from Alaska that had to move to Colorado to further his hockey career because the opportunities weren't there in Alaska.
Right.
The long journey he took, a 3-year guy at Maine.
Yep.
And then the Bruins drafted him before he became a Black Bear. There's a gratitude there. I'm very happy for him.
Yes.
And you know how big this is. And during his press conference, I just kept thinking back to when Brad Marchand spoke to the media. And was like, I'm talking with Jeremy. This is stuff we want to get done. We want this all closed up by the regular season, but he knew the solution would be on both sides. And the Bruins stepped up. They had to meet him. And it is the new era of athletes, which I'm always in favor of them getting paid. Get every cent because you give everything to these leagues and these franchises. Yeah. We saw it with Charlie McAvoy. We've seen it with David Pastrnak. Now with Jeremy Swayman. There is no more of that hometown discount. There is no more of taking a pay cut for the spoke to be, which isn't at fault of these players. I'm not going to say they're selfish.
Sure.
This is Don Sweeney adapting and doing what it takes to bring a Stanley Cup to Boston. and it's a step up by Charlie Jacobs and ownership as well. We're saying we will spend to the cap, we will make what works and make it all happen, and it happened there.
I think that's well said. I also think this too. There's no more distractions with this stuff. You just didn't want this. It already was starting to get there. We're not even in the regular season yet, but you certainly did not want this cloud of this contract hanging over your current players on the roster in the regular season, asking about their goalie, right? And so this is over now. It's out of Swayman's mind. It's out of the players' minds in terms of being a distraction and them having to answer for it. Sweeney doesn't have to talk about it. The deal is done, and thank God for that. What I hope, though, of course, on today, reflecting on getting his deal, I understand Jeremy Swayman being so happy and reflecting as he did there in that soundbite, but I need that chip on his shoulder. I need the show you're watching on Amazon. You said he was talking about how people don't believe in him, and he's been checking the boxes. People said, well, he couldn't play in the playoffs, or he hasn't yet. Well, I checked that box. You still need to see that chip on the shoulder. Just because you got paid and you got what you wanted contractually does not mean the journey is over, my friend. I mean, you still have to prove it.
Yep.
Although you're paid like you've proven it, on the ice, there's still so much to do. I believe he will.
And him talking about a plane to catch sounds like he'll be traveling with the team down to Florida.
That's
Season opener's October 8th. As Don Sweeney said it, though, like they're still back in Corpus Salo. We'll get the opening night start.
Yep.
And he tallies it up. When Jeremy Swayman and goalie Bob feel that they're ready, that's when Sway will get the start. Obviously, October 10th against the Canadians. That is a home opener. That's one to eye. If not, then maybe Saturday, just over a week, when they host the Kings. It'd be cool to see him in the net with the Habs.
Yep.
What I like that he pointed out, too, was, all right, so you did the holdout. You're going to be ready? And right away he said, look, I'm a Maine Black Bear, but I owe a lot to BU because he was out of Ganis. BU, obviously their head coach is Jay Pandolfo, former assistant coach for the Boston Bruins. And he's doing a solid, obviously, for Jim Montgomery, saying opening his doors, opening his facilities, and letting him practice with the team, which had to be unbelievable for those guys.
Can you imagine?
BU's one of the best teams in the country again. For their goaltender, Matthew Caron, to see Jeremy Swayman up close and possible. Yeah. But he said, because of them, I owe them a lot. I'm an honorary Terrier, I feel like.
Yeah.
That's what's kept me in shape and sharp. Still needs to get some games under his belt, but that's big that he wasn't off just like fishing in Alaska. No one knew where he was, including me. I was like, what is he doing? I don't know.
Right.
He was in Boston.
Working.
Here, ready. Exactly.
Yep.
It was a holdout for him, but that doesn't mean he was holding out from putting the work in on the ice.
That's right.
So he's going to be as ready as possible. Those preseason games are significant, though. Like 3-4, you want
sure
under
it
your belt
is.
to get
Game
ready.
speed, right?
Exactly. And this is a team that will take a month or two to hit their stride because you have to think of, how does Elias Lindholm slot in?
Sure.
Where's Nikita Zadorov fall? When does Mason Larrai start getting his legs back under him? But nonetheless, it sounds like, if they have Jeremy Swayman by mid-October, the latest, that is a huge win for the Bruins.
Not just that, bro, but I'm thinking about game speed and him getting in shape and getting acclimated. Nothing against the BU kids. I'm sure they're great, but it is not the same game speed as the NHL players. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, look, the deal's done. I'm cool with whenever they go to him. That's where you put all your trust in the coaching staff and obviously in Jeremy Swayman himself and the work that goes into it.
Yep.
But my thing is this. I don't want to see him in between the pipes and then he looks like crap and then everyone says, well, maybe we rushed him back. No, don't play that game. I mean, the season's too long for that. The deal is done, okay? He's under contract for 8 years, for God's sakes. Take your time, work yourself back into the lineup. So when you are in there, you are truly Jeremy Swayman. So
let's get to his second soundbite we have from his press conference. Just talking about when he reflects on the moment, what it means to him. It's right here.
That's goosebumps right now. It's everything. And again, I couldn't have done this process without the incredible support of the city and the fans and my incredible family. First and foremost, my dad. He's been there through it all, and it's going to be pretty special getting to hug him after this. I could just imagine what it's going to be like. So my amazing agent, obviously, Lewis, and the entire sports professional team, special management team, and my wonderful girlfriend and her entire family. And again, this city is unmatched, and that's why so many players want to play here. And I cannot wait to represent it the right way for 8 more years.
Taking it serious, man. He's not taking that contract for granted. It was a lot of talk about what it means to the city, how special the city is, and the privilege he has to represent the Bruins and be their goalie. You don't get $8.25 million a year and not start less than 55 games a season.
Yeah,
less
that's
than
right.
60 games a season.
Well, he's got to earn it.
And then be the guy throughout the playoffs. You saw him do it last year.
He's got to do it.
This is a really big step for him in his career. But someone that, as you said, took the motivation of what he heard in arbitration and brought it into next season, especially in the postseason, do the same thing now. Because whatever he heard in arbitration last year, maybe it is of, hey, you weren't the number one guy. You're not a 55, 60 star guy. Whatever he heard from his agent, Louis Gross, throughout these negotiations of, well, they're saying this. If whatever transparency and communication they had, I'm not sure, take that and motivate him. But he knows the weight it carries to be a Boston Bruins goalie, a player for the Bruins, and a guy that this original six franchise is investing this long-term investment in 8 years in.
Well, think about the steps, right? I mean, we'll use this word, flashed long enough to show this franchise that they can make this kind of investment in him. Yeah. I don't like using the word flash because that just suggests, a couple games, a handful of games, he was great. It was better than that. But he has had to share time, right, with Ullmark. So now, okay, you commit to Sway, you give him his money. In theory, this kid should be entering his prime, George. I mean, at 25 years old here, you should be getting 8 great years from Jeremy Swayman. This is not a back-end guy like Bobrovsky or something. Yeah. Like, this kid is in his prime here. So you think entering it. We'll see. But I love the deal. As I said to start the show, I think it's a win-win for both. I think Swayman getting his money, obviously, and he wants to be here. You hear comments like that, he gets it. He knows what it means to be a Bruin. But the Bruins, I mean, again, if this kid is entering his prime, you get 8 years of this. And when we look back, right now it's a lot of money, but when we look back 2-3 years, all these contracts always, at the moment you sign them, you say, oh my gosh, they got what? Yep. And then you look 2-3 years down the line and you're like, man, that deal, that's a bargain. Look at this guy who's not even as good as Jeremy Swayman making Swayman money. That's what's going to happen. So 8 years of this kid entering his prime. And to George's point, the window's now. You probably got this season, obviously, and maybe 2 more for a cup in terms of how the team is currently constructed. Yep. I believe he gets one, George.